Welcome, welcome. Welcome to The Play That Changed My Life, the podcast that I created just to add more theater to my life. We're going to talk today with two very special guests, two of my favorite people in the Capital Region. Judi Merriam, who is starring as Grandma Kernitz in Neil Simon's Lost in Yonkers at Sand Lake Center for the Arts. Welcome.
Thank you, Patrick. I am delighted to be here.
I'm glad. And Brian Sheldon, the managing director of Sand Lake Center for the Arts, and the director of The Minutes by Tracy Letts at Albany Civic Theater. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you for having me. Long time no see.
Yeah, since last night's rehearsal. I am in The Minutes. And The Minutes and Lost in Yonkers go up on the same evening on February 16th. I'll be there.
One of them. Yes, you will.
And Lost in Yonkers runs for 2 weekends to February 25th. And The Minutes runs 3 weekends until March 3rd. So whenever a bunch of Capital Region community theater people get together from different groups, they all say, we need a calendar. We need to avoid the same weekend. We need to see each other's stuff, and we're all running on the same weekend. Oh, what do you say to that?
I say, yes.
Yes.
We do need a calendar. We do need a calendar, but more than a calendar, we need a conversation. I mean, thanks to your work and everybody else's work in what we're doing in the Capital Region is we have such a wealth of theater that it deserves a conversation and a calendar. We talked about that over COVID when we were sitting on Zoom meetings after meetings saying, hey, we talked about a collaborative. We talked about getting a calendar so we can say, hey, not even just having the same weekends, but if we can stagger them by one weekend, then you create more opportunity to see. Because I know that you're probably dying inside that you're not going to be able to see Lost in Yonkers because you're in a show.
Are you sure we're not going to see it?
I heard you're coming Wednesday night.
Oh, there you go. I didn't hear that.
I'm not sure what I have scheduled for Wednesday.
Because you're not Lost in Yonkers, so you wouldn't hear that.
I wouldn't, but
right?
I kind of run the theater.
Yeah.
Oh, that's our dark night.
Oh, wait a minute.
Is it? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because our director said, the Minutes, some of the Minutes people want to come see Lost in Yonkers. Are you okay if they come Wednesday night?
And they all said no.
Yeah,
I said no. So, and we're just out of a couple of Schenectady shows ran the same 2 weekends this past couple of weeks. Spring Awakening, The Father, and Picasso at the Lapin Agile all had the same 2 weekends. Crazy, right? Well, unless, this weekend there's only 2 shows in the area. Mountaintop opens tonight. We're taping on February 1st. And Union College has a show this weekend called Patriot Acts. So there were, 8 shows last weekend, and there are 2 this weekend. So that, I guess if we had a calendar, that could have been slightly avoided. But when they opened in the middle of January, that gave them a week to do tech. Otherwise, they would have been teching on Christmas Eve if they were going to go earlier. And that's what happens. There are only so many weekends in the year, and unless you want to tech on Easter Sunday or New Year's Eve or Thanksgiving weekend, we're going to wind up with this.
Oh, there's no way around. It's going to be there. There's going to be overflow, not overflow.
Which is a great problem to have. And if everyone was going to as much theater, as they could possibly fit in, and that was the real problem, like I cannot go see theater, well, then, there's always something to go see.
There is definitely always something to go see if you want to see something.
Right?
Yes.
So the 3 groups that just closed and said, I can't go see my friend's show, they can all show up at Capitol Rep tonight and see Angelique and Inyabasi rocket in the Mountaintop.
Directed by Michael Lake.
Tonight.
It doesn't get much better.
Yes.
In my
It's going to be
opinion.
awesome. Black Theater Troupe of upstate New York. Covering a little bit of news since the last time we taped. A great friend of the theater, a giant in Capital Region Theater, Dick Feldman, passed away last Wednesday at the age of 87. Dick, it's impossible to say how influential he was to Capital Region Theater. He taught at Bethlehem High School from 1957, I believe. He attended all their reunions, their productions. He created their theater department. Friends reached out to me from the class of 62. He was planning on going to the class of 74's 50th reunion, which I believe Ken Clapp is a 74. Bethlehem. Everyone, and he would tell stories, and everyone went to Bethlehem. Megan Kelly, Nan Molyneux, and, Phil Rice. He tells a story about how Phil met his wife in Dick's 8th grade English class. Yeah. Yeah.
You got to tip your hat.
Crazy. Just the history. My partner Chris and I would take him. He wanted to see like every Albany Civic Theater show and every Curtain Call Theater show, and that became like our date night. And we would go to Applebee's first, and he loved the high top tables. And we would go he loved our date nights, and we would go to these shows. And it was just great hearing all these stories. He was constantly telling these stories about the Bethlehem graduates and how he directed at Albany Civic Theater when it was just converted from a firehouse. Albany Civic Theater moved uptown. It used to be where the plaza was. It was destroyed in the creation of the plaza, I believe. And they moved uptown. Mayor Corning gave them a firehouse, and they put in seats and poured concrete. And he directed a show with this guy whose photo is up at Albany Civic, Dick Ostrander. And he said how rambunctious, he was always a little bit much. And he ran off the stage and did this leap. And Dick said, "Please don't do that leap." And he leaped, and he broke his leg in the middle of a performance. And
Dick Ostrander or Dick?
Yeah, Dick Ostrander. And Dick Feldman was standing in the lobby, and the emergency medical team brought him downstairs and out. Great stories.
He had him.
Yeah.
I didn't know Dick well. I met him a couple times, but the Facebook posts after he died were just so heartwarming and heartfelt and lovely, and made me wish that I did know him better.
Yeah, well, I'm sure he saw you.
Oh,
I'm sure he knows you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I met him at one of those luncheons that started up again, or were you at the diner in Rensselaer?
Yeah, you went to one of those.
I did go to one of those.
That's
with
how
Gail
I met Dick.
Garrison.
At the Skyline?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Skyline Diner. He went to the Skyline
You were
Diner
there.
6 mornings a week.
Yeah, every day.
6 mornings a week.
Really?
Yeah.
They did. They named a sandwich after it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
they
my
called it the Feldman.
gosh.
Yeah.
But yeah, he had this brunch that he had like on Wednesdays, I think it was. But Pat Devane and Pat Riley and
Gail
Dick
Garrison
Hart.
went to that. Yeah, Dick. That's right. Dick Hart was there.
Yeah, giants. Yeah, and he would regale us with all the stories and gather all this, generations of Capital Region Theater. When I got fired from my job and I had afternoons free, I would go out to hear these stories out at the Wednesday brunches at Skyline. That's how, Chris and I started.
So who picks that ball up? Yeah, I mean, because you just said we hear all these stories, and he did have stories. Man, he had awesome stories about hoofing, and he just was a storyteller, and he was all but 3'8". Just this tiny man with this big voice and this wonderful personality, but like. We talk about a schedule. We talk about a calendar of events. We talk about how great our area is, and it is. And Patrick's Way. I bet he saw you in.
I know.
Plenty of shows, but it just goes back to how lucky we are, and maybe we are this huge community. In other words, for community is family. Like we get closer and closer. Look how close we've gotten over the years. Look how close we've gotten. We were acquaintances 10 years ago, and who picks that ball up and goes, "Hey, we should think about a luncheon once a month," because what we do have is us who are just 40 plus, right? There's kids
You're being
coming
kind,
up now.
Brian.
Well, I'm 41.
Plus.
But I'm 41, so I may be 40.
Emphasis on the plus.
But wouldn't it be a great thing to consider, like getting some of the younger talent that's coming up? I mean, we're going to be 87 at some point, and we're going to have these stories. Who's 87 now other than Dick that can tell us, who can pass those stories on of where I never knew Mayor Corning gave the building to Albany.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
Mayor Corning gave Capitol Reps building.
Really?
Yeah, down on Pearl Street. Yeah, Bruce Bouchard walked into his office and set Capitol Rep up.
But think of how many cool stories just like Pat Brady has.
Yeah.
And what she can do information-wise on some of these young actresses who are just trying some stuff out. Like,
I wanted to get Dick on the podcast, and I just missed it. Just missed it. And it's like, oh, there's an opportunity gone. But you're right. Pat Brady, Pat Riley, Margaret King, Don Mealy, Tom Delasala. Yeah? Yeah.
Tom Delasala's been passing wisdom on to me for 35 years. But that's my point, is like, what do you have? What do you have to give to the younger generations?
Great stuff. We'll miss him terribly. And you're right. Who's going to pick up the ball? And it's up to us to carry his spirit on. I know, I'll miss Applebee's.
No, you won't.
Yeah, right. He was so excited about going to Applebee's, and like Chris and I were like, oh.
Applebee's. Oh yeah, like 80% sodium in my meal. Waters by the time you leave, just to replenish your body.
Oh, too funny. All right. So Lost in Yonkers, Judi Merriam is becoming the serious actor. You're trying on new stuff every role. What's going on?
I love doing new stuff, Patrick. It is an absolute blast. As you well know, I wanted to not do theater anymore when the roles for older women in musical theater became less and less, and there were more and more of us competing for them. But my friend here, Brian Sheldon, gave me my very first opportunity after I took acting classes with you. I even remember emailing you and said, Brian Sheldon offered me a part, and then there were none. What do you think? And Patrick said, what is there to think?
Yeah.
So
I didn't know that.
Yes, because I didn't know. Nobody had ever offered me a bitchy role before. I'd always sort of played nice. So
I knew you had it in you.
Well, it's perfectly acceptable to be a bitch on stage, not in real life.
Right.
But
that had to have been a really cool call. So it was cast. The role was cast by another actor, Miss Paula Ginder, who I'm obsessed with, and she had to leave the show for other reasons. But so Judi didn't audition for the role. So I'm like, hey, who can we call to? We were a month and a half into rehearsal. You came on.
I think
people were off book by the time you came in. Like
4 to 5 weeks, maybe.
It was, and we were in the process, and she had to step away. And I was like, who do we know that can do the role? And Melanie said, hey, you know Judi Merriam? And I was like, we knew each other. Like, hi, how are you? And I said, she does musicals. And she goes, well, yeah, but talk to her. So when Melanie had your number, so
I love Melanie.
Melanie's my wife, and it was really one of the really coolest, like, happy accidents getting you into that show, because it was really, really great. Paula would have been great. She would have been great. You were great too.
Yeah.
And I will always be eternally grateful to you, Brian. As sad as I was for Paula to drop out, the fact that Melanie recommended me and you took a chance on me and I was able to do it. Was a shot in the arm for me. But it was really interesting because people avoided me afterwards. It was like, if she's this nasty on stage, she must be really nasty in real life. But yeah, that was the first straight play I had ever done. And I realized I can do this. Patrick gave me the courage to do this. Brian asked me to do this. And I love it. And I love the fact that I reinvented myself, because how many singers have I heard from Schenectady Light Opera Company over the years, women way older than I am, that said, oh yes, when I was Maria in The Sound of Music, and then they stopped doing everything and they stayed in that time period. And I thought, I do this because I love this. I don't want to stay in that time period. I want to change the way I need to change.
Yeah, well, that takes a certain amount of courage and opening yourself up to new experiences. I'm not a musical guy. I mean, like, I'm a music director's nightmare. They'll sit next to me at an audition and hit a note and go, little higher, little lower, you'll be fine.
You're just saying the same note.
Yeah, right. That's all I got for you. That's it. But, and it wasn't until I was living in the city 6-7 years until I saw Into the Woods, and I go, oh, this is what it's about, and I was like, oh, I can see musicals and enjoy them, and then and to think I missed Dreamgirls, Sunday in the Park with George, and all these musicals that I was living in the city at the time, and I was just like, no, I'm a serious actor. I don't do musicals. I can't watch musicals. They don't have anything to do with me, and it's like, you just have to, flip the switch.
I think it's a comfort thing too. So I was talking with Sean Morgan, who's playing Mr. Breeding in the Minutes with us, and he's a very accomplished musical theater actor, and he was saying to me last night that he was having a great time with our process, and this is his third straight play, and he was thanking me for it, and I was like, "Don't thank me yet. Like, you still got work to do."
I love Brian Sheldon.
But he said, "Do you, as a musical theater person, were you skeptical of directing musical theater people?" And I said, "No, I'm never." I said, "It's you have to be comfortable in a different setting." And he's like, "What do you mean?" So I've done musical theater, and I just don't do it anymore. I love it, but I don't want to sing anymore. But I don't act at all anymore. But I was saying, in a musical, there's a certain level of comfortability that you're given a lot of what you want in the written music.
Yes.
So the music gives you the emotion. Mm-hmm. The music has a straight pathway for you to take as the artist. There's ways to transform it and come up with new discoveries. That's true to everything. But as musical theater performers, we tend to get extremely comfortable in what we're doing. So stepping into a straight play and just being in a complete different world really can open your eyes to even more discovery.
That is so true, Brian. I really disliked that so many times people would introduce me to somebody and we would talk about shows, and that person that introduced me would say, "Oh, well, I only see you as a singer, not an actor." And I thought, can I translate a role apart from music? And you are so right. And that was the goal for me, to learn to be believable without singing a song.
So when I've only directed one musical, and it was Into the Woods at SLOC, and I had a great time. But I remember being frustrated at some points because some of the actors, not all of them, we would end a song in a rehearsal, and I would want to talk about the scene and what we were doing and what it meant and how we go forward, and they didn't care about it. They just wanted to go right to the musical director to make sure that was that B flat where it needs to be? Was I heavy on that B flat, or was it too flat? And I'm like, I finally said in a rehearsal, I was like, I could give a about the notes you're singing. It's Sondheim. Like, he doesn't care about the notes. Can we talk about the scene and what it means?
Yeah.
So that's not you, but we tend to get stuck in what we do.
And along with that, Brian, I would agree with you. Singers sometimes are so concerned about the notes and what they're singing that they don't think about the character enough. We get so hung up on sounding perfect. And the reality is, when I go to a show, I don't care if every note is on. I care how believable somebody is on stage while they're doing it.
Yeah.
Which, it's funny that we're Into the Woods is we're back to Sondheim, and and that was my hook into musical theater, because the characters were so believable. He created a world of people who made sense, and they made sense with their music.
In
right?
a made-up world.
Right?
Kings, queens, giants.
Right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and it's acting believably under imaginary circumstances, the Sanford Meisner quote. Tell us about Grandma Kernitz.
Ooh.
I love Grandma Kernitz.
Oh, dear.
I was very disappointed that I was, originally when I read the script, I was disappointed that I was too old to play Bella, because I really loved the part of Bella. But as I looked into Grandma Kernitz more, and Maureen always has us write our backstories, and I love, because I'm a writer too, I love to write backstories and invent my character and what I came up with. And Grandma Kernitz is a really broken woman.
Yeah.
She will never get Mother of the Year. She's a horrible mother. But the depth of her, and even the signs of the redemption at the end of her change. I like characters that are allowed to change throughout a show.
Yeah, absolutely. What year are we in?
Early 1940s, 1942.
And she runs a candy shop, and has an apartment above it.
She does. In Yonkers, she lives above the candy shop with her daughter, Bella.
Yes, and Bella is challenged.
Bella is probably mentally challenged. All of Grandma's children are incredibly emotionally challenged. They're very damaged.
Right. And the play starts off with her son bringing his two sons to be cared for.
Yes.
By Grandma Kernitz.
And they don't want to be there, and Grandma doesn't want them.
Delightful.
They've just lost their mother to cancer.
Yes.
And Eddie, the father, is going to search for work to pay for them to be a father, and has no choice but to drop the two boys off at the grandmother's doorstep.
Hard times. And this is Neil Simon's Pulitzer winner.
Yep, 1991.
Yep.
And it sounds like a rather dire situation, but it's Neil Simon. So are there laughs?
There are lots of laughs. Oh my gosh, that just laughs in the. It sounds almost sacrilegious, but there are laughs in the tragic characters, the tragedy of the characters, because that's Neil Simon. Neil Simon took life and the dysfunction of life and gave people lines to say that without trying to be funny. They're funny, and that could very well be from his. Well, I think it is from his background. But isn't that what life is? Life is a mess. And if we don't laugh, or if we don't see the ludicrousy in our own messiness, we don't make it to the end.
Yeah, and if you think about it, I mean, his life, he grew up in the Depression. He served in the military. His first wife died very young, and he remarried. Chapter 2, which was done at Schenectady Civic recently. But he has, throughout his career, mined serious topics. Even Barefoot in the Park, if you look at it as how do we live together? How do we accommodate each other? How do we build this relationship? And and it's like 2 weeks of freak out after getting married. There's the initial rush of falling in love, and then there's the hard work, right? And Barefoot in the Park is all about the hard work.
Well, and it can be educational too. I mean, we don't know, your grandparents might have not live together before they got married. That's something younger people can't fathom at this
Right.
point. Like
Yep.
when you start dating someone, you kind of move in.
True.
You know, it's like you start this process earlier on in where we're at in society. So I think it's a really great way to show younger people, like, look, this is how we used to live. I mean, we do it with Shakespeare. We do. Neil Simon is our American version of it. Him and Arthur Miller, in my opinion, is the best way to say, look, this was American life. This is how it's very Norman Rockwellian. Neil Simon is very Norman Rockwellian.
Yes.
And I just love that it gives us a glimpse into the not so distant past of how life was and how serious it was. Because he was born in the Depression, grew up very, very, very poor. It gives us a way to look at the seriousness of what life was, and Simon's ability to pull the humor out of those situations is remarkable, and it's such a talent. It's what makes him still in 2024 a viable playwright when we're picking seasons. Is people are coming to see it, and the messaging is still there. And that's why when people are like, why do you always do a Simon? That's why. Because he knew what he was doing.
So you're the managing director of Sand Lake Center for the Arts, and you chose Lost in Yonkers.
I'm gonna flip my hair because I am the executive director.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I've
been calling you the wrong thing.
Brian does everything at Sand Lake Center.
I have a wonderful team of
I'm
people that
sorry.
but yeah, when I picked the show, that's one of the reasons why. And then also going back to what you were saying is you mentioned, it made me think of it, is Simon's ability to write youth and the dynamics that youth go to without making it in your face, like angsty, without making it Spring Awakening. He has this wonderful ability of presenting youth in a way that is endearing, and it's packed full of the ability to remember what it was like when you were younger. It's just it's mind-boggling to me how good of a writer he actually is.
But even with that, Brian, the relationships that, like in Lost in Yonkers, that the grandchildren, and then even Grandma Kernitz's own children, there are times when I look at my character and I think, why did they all just not leave her alone? Because she's so miserable. But it's a huge testimony to grace and working dysfunction out in families. And each of the children says something about Grandma. Not her grandchildren, but the children in the story about, she's this way because they give her a mulligan. They put up with her because she had a crappy life. And the grandsons put up with her because she had a crappy life. And we don't do that as regularly in families anymore as we used to, I think.
Well, it creates an argument of should we?
I agree with you. And there comes a point, I thought, gosh, if she was my mother, I would have left her years ago and let her sit alone in her apartment.
But there's also the financial aspect of it, that these children are dependent on her. She is the business owner.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Louie's not as dependent on her, but he certainly comes home when he needs a place to hide.
Yeah.
So.
Excellent. Are you enjoying it?
I am. I love the character. It's really fun. I'm always trying to think of how to be more believable. How am I going to walk with a cane? The German accent has been a challenge for me, and I egotistically thought I did accents well. Well, German is a little bit harder, so I have a friend in Germany who's been helping me, and then a local woman whose parents came over from Germany. So
you're taking a huge risk.
I always want to do a believable accent, so that's been a bit of a challenge, but it's good. I love challenges, Patrick. I don't ever want to sit home and not
I can't wait to see
do
this.
something better than I'm normally doing. So
Excellent. And you're working with Maureen Omond. It's her second project directing. She did The Last Romance last year.
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Judi was also in that.
Thank you. Yeah, great. So, Brian.
Yeah.
What's going on with the minutes?
Oh, man. I
can't wait to hear.
we were at when I found the minutes, it was on its replacement run on Broadway.
Really?
It was, because it opened pre-COVID
right.
and then it closed and then they
Did
revamped
it ever
it.
open?
I think it had like 3 performances or maybe previews or
I
something.
think it was previews.
So it's Broadway. I call it as performance. You're charging an audience to come see a preview.
Yeah, but the critics didn't sound in.
Well, no, they can't. So when I saw it, we were at a Mets game in Flushing, and the Mets were getting crushed.
Of course.
I didn't know.
Crushed. And
The Mets had to come in.
Melanie was pregnant at the time, and she did not want to be in this 98-degree weather anymore. So she goes, "Do you want to just like leave and try to get tickets to a show?" And we were like, "Yeah." And which my father-in-law is a huge, Bill,
Yes.
he's a ridiculous Mets fan. And I was like, "Yeah, we can leave because I'm a Yankee fan." But they go, "Is there anything you want to see?" I was like, "Is there?" I was like, "There's a new Tracy Letts play. Like, let's go see that." And I knew at first I was like, my mother-in-law is going to hate this play because it's political. So we saw it, and we're sitting there, and it's an hour and a half show, no intermission. 3-4 minutes into the play, Melanie leans over to me and goes, "You want to direct this play?" And I go, "Oh yeah."
She knows you well.
We got to the end, and we're standing there applauding because it was just that good. I don't give out standing ovations, but this one I was like, I gave a standing ovation more for the writing of the play because it was Tracy Letts, in my opinion, is just a genius. So we're standing there applauding, and she goes, "You need to direct this." And I was like, "Oh yeah, no, I have to direct this play." So when I was invited to submit to Albany Civic, that's the only play I gave. I said, "This is the only play I'm interested in directing right now. I don't want to do anything else." And they were like, "Well, it's really an unknown play." And I was like, "You need to be doing unknown plays. Like, please just read the play." And it was unavailable at the time. And I know I have this really great hookup that can this person just finds plays that are unavailable. Because I couldn't buy it. It was unpublished at this point. So I got a PDF and found out that it was scheduled to open for rights. So sent it. They loved it. So it's a political comedy.
So, yeah, what do you love about political comedies?
Well, it's the way that Letts writes humor in the mundane is really, really interesting to me. Is like, if you've ever sat in a board meeting, we talk about this in rehearsals, is they can be extremely boring and formulaic. Now we're going to approve the minutes. Does anyone have anything to talk about the minutes? And that's all in the play. But the way that Tracy Letts writes is it's just chock full of humor as well. Like there's asides, and it just gets you through the monotony of what a formulaic meeting is. And I just fell in love with that. And I was like, this is great. And it's just really funny. These characters are incredible archetypes of who we see on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
And it's the full gamut. There's the young person who has just joined the board. There's this really, really neurotic woman who you don't know how long has been there, but she just keeps taking medications out of her bags, and she's sanitizing everything. And you can see all her neuroses come to life. And there's the bully on the board. There's the guy who agrees with everything that the mayor
bully,
says.
Patrick?
I want my way.
And then there's the elderly people on the board who are just so stuck in their ways and can't get past the fact that they've been on the board and this is the way that they've always done things. It was just really funny to watch all that. And then we can't talk about it, but it's really, really funny. And then it's not.
Yeah.
And the message of the play, when we get to the message of the play, I remember being in the theater watching it going, like
shocking.
audibly like, whoa. Because it turns on a dime, and it is the most abrupt turn I've ever been a part of on stage.
But it's all there. There's nothing gratuitous in it. He has done his work and set it up and completed the story, and it's shocking and frightening and poetic
and needed.
Yeah.
And needed. If you're watching or listening to this podcast and then see the show, you'll know exactly what we're talking about when it happens. But it's a conversation we need to have we needed to have had.
And
Very
it
well
is a political comedy. It's also a comedy about politics. But the thing, you described it so well, is that it is also about how do we live together? How do we, as a society, form a family and get things done? And how, and it's looking more and more unlikely that America as a country cannot get things done. And we're in an election year, so political comedies are very relevant to what's going on.
It's tough because you really want to talk about it, don't you?
I am so glad that you have one more weekend than we do because I really want to see it.
Tracy Letts is a fantastic writer, Pulitzer winner for August Osage County,
which is being done.
This is a Pulitzer finalist, also Tony nominated.
Obie final too, finalist, Obie Award finalist as well.
Yep. But Sean Morgan and I were in a Tracy Letts production of Superior Donuts at Capitol Repertory many years ago. So very exciting.
And our cast. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
The cast in this show.
Well, yeah, when Regina was telling me your cast, I thought, oh my gosh, what a great cast.
Regina Baker's our stage manager.
Yeah.
But I mean, Chris and Patrick are in it.
I know.
Sean Morgan.
Bill's in it, right?
Bill Douglas is in it.
The father-in-law.
Who are some of the others? Yeah,
Aaron Moore is in it.
Samantha Moyran.
Moyran, yeah.
Moyran.
Gary Hoffman.
Oh, yes.
From the musical world, Kevin O'Toole.
Kevin O'Toole. And Gary Hoffman. Yeah.
And Gary Hoffman.
Diana
Ryan
Neal.
Palmer.
Oh, that's right.
Not to
Yes.
Yeah. Ryan Palmer's like a cannonball on stage. Comedically, he's like a cannonball.
Yeah, Ryan Palmer is Regina's epitome actor of who gets totally Neil Simon.
Yeah.
Who performed in Barefoot in the Park.
And
Was he
second, just said it's connected.
Chapter
two.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's a conversation that's because we do it in Straight Place too. Is Ryan has a wheelhouse. It's a very good wheelhouse. Ryan does what Ryan does extremely well. There's not a lot of people in the area who does comedy.
Funniest
is Ryan. He's just so funny. So like conversations we have in rehearsals I have with him in rehearsals is, look, the lines are funny, man. Like you don't have a little more fun just sitting in them as opposed to performing them. And it's been a really great conversation with Ryan's a buddy at this point. This is the first time I ever directed him though. And we're having a good time pulling Ryan back.
Yeah.
Which is...
First time I saw Ryan Palmer was in a Classic Theater Guild adaptation of Christmas Carol, and he played the Ghost of Christmas Past, and for some reason they had Magic Carpet Ride playing as he led Scrooge back to his past, and Ryan was doing a hula to Magic Carpet Ride. It's the first time I'll never forget it. I was like, that gentleman.
You mean like a whole new world?
Is a funny guy. Yes, yes, he was the genie.
Ryan was in the first acting class I took with you, Pat. That's how I met Ryan originally.
We got to do Ryan and I did we've seen each other, but we 2 summers ago when Theater Barn was closing, we did the Agatha Christie is called Fiddler's 3.
Last production, wasn't it?
That was their last production. Yeah.
You closed it.
I mean, I must have been horrible. But that's the last time
kiss
I was
of
on stage.
death.
Yeah, I was. I feel really bad for the Theater Barn. We were in rehearsal. We were in tech rehearsals, and Abe Phelps come down to give us our paychecks, and he was like, "Sad to tell you that this will be our last show." And we're like, "What?" And then so he left, and we're there. Those of us who are local, we were like, "Look, this is like a big deal. Like they've been around for 40 years."
Yeah. Devastating.
I was like, I know that you guys come in and job in from New York or whatever. This is just another theater. I was like, but this is a big deal for our community. I mean, think of our friend Kathleen is still grieving the Theater Barn's loss. It's a great loss for our community.
Yeah.
Because it served as a wonderful way for those of us who don't normally get paid to act and direct.
Yeah.
to do that.
Professional circumstances
Yeah, it was great.
in a Berkshire theater.
Yep.
And you had all that luxury of being in a summer theater house, within driving distance of the capital region.
Yeah.
And
So that was the first time Ryan and I actually got to work together, was on stage as opposed to me directing. And I was like, I'd seen Ryan in many things at that point, and I was like, this kid is funny. He's a really funny kid. I want to direct him. I want to have some fun with him. So when I told him he should really come out for this, I was like, dude, you got to come out for this, because I'm getting my paws on you, kid. Like, and I'm having a blasty.
The other funny thing about this production and the cast is how many directors are in the cast. There's me, Chris, Aaron, Gary,
Diane.
Yeah, I want to know from Brian what it's like to direct directors.
At first it was, so when I went home that night after auditions, I was like, here's what I'm doing. And Melanie goes, oh, yeah, that's a really good looking, that's a director heavy show. And I was like, yeah, it really is. And she goes, you're not nervous? I go, no. So Melanie thought I would be nervous directing you and Chris. And I'm not. She was like, you don't feel some sort of way about directing Chris and Patrick? I was like, no. She goes, but Chris was your teacher. And I was like, well, yeah, he was. I don't know if you know that, but Chris was he was one of my acting teachers at SCCC when I was a kid. And I said, no, I've directed other teachers of mine. I mean, I've directed David Baker. I've directed David Bunce. I've directed some of these. I wasn't nervous about it. What I was thinking was, oh, am I going to get like side eye? Ooh, that's a bad choice. Because as a director, there's no way around it. You're going to make a bad choice. You're going to try something that doesn't work. And what I do is, I don't know if you remember this, is I'll go, hey, let's try this. If it's wrong, I'll be the first one to tell you it's wrong. We can change it.
I do remember you saying that, Brian.
So like you get a lot of leeway with that. It's like, let's try it.
I don't know. That's my go-to phrase. Here's a stupid idea.
Tell me if I'm wrong. So it happened last night. Here's something that it wasn't a stupid idea, but I gave Gary Hoffman, who has quite literally been around me since I was 18 years old, and Gary isn't old enough to play his role. Gary, I think, is late 60s. This Oldfield gentleman is well in his 80s.
It's hard to cast into.
It's fair, yeah. And we just lost Dick, so he didn't come out. So, I gave Gary a cane, one of those 4-prong canes, and I said, just see if it works. And 2 seconds in, he goes, I'm talking about this cane. And I go, oh, just try it. And he's trying it. He's walking around. We weren't even rehearsal yet. He's just walking around with it. He goes, Brian, I think if I have the cane, you're gonna limit the actor in what they can do physically. And I was like, give me the cane. And he was like, really? I go, yeah, you just explained everything I needed to know about you in regards to this cane. You don't want the dang cane. It's going to get in your way. I'd rather you not have a cane. I was like, but thank you for trying it. Like I was wrong. I was 100% wrong. So when there's other directors in the room, what you do get is, not all the time, this isn't a bad thing. It might come off as a complaint. It's not. Is suggestions. You get those from actors anyway. But if someone has directed, they can, not always, go, I noticed something. Can I give you something? And I'm like, you can try. Give it a shot. And where I'm a little different in my process is I don't go, this is what it is, let's rehearse it for 2 months. I'm like, let's try this. If it doesn't work, we'll play around with it. And I'm like, you can change it in tech week. I don't care. Like, we'll figure it out. Like, if something new has to happen. And so I said to this one time, someone came up to me and was like, I think this. And I was like, oh, I'm not done directing this scene yet. Like, I just haven't given that note yet. Like, I'm thinking it. I didn't give that note yet. So I thought it would be a lot more confrontational with other directors, but it's really not. It's really, the hardest part is finding people to come to a critique, because everybody that I would invite to my critique is in the play.
I'll give you a critique.
Or is it also that nobody wants to critique a bunch of directors that they've been in shows with because they might never get cast again?
Oh, there you go.
They could be, but also in a critique, the actors would go away. They don't sit in the critique, but
That's true.
Is there going to be masking?
Did you ever hear about that?
No.
So primarily my sets are done with Adam Coons.
Okay.
He's my best friend, so like it's easy to work with your friends. And most of my sets have been done by Adam. And in a critique, someone always says, you're not done in a critique. It's weeks before you open.
Yeah,
There's still things.
It's 2 weeks before you open,
Yeah,
right?
it's and someone will say, that corner over there, upstage right, will there be masking there? And Adam will throw his notebook in the air because it's one of those questions that's like, yeah.
Duh.
Nope.
Nope.
We want you to see back into the green room.
It's an Ivo von Hove production.
Well, now here's a question for you then,
Yes.
Mr. ED of Sand Lake Center for the Arts. Why do we not have a critique for Circle Theater players?
Because it's not required. Critiques are not required.
Why couldn't they be required?
It can
You
be.
want one?
You want one? Yeah, that's okay. Mark this down. An actor has requested.
Critique.
I don't require them because I'm only doing one at Albany Civic because the board asks for one, and they don't ask for one to nitpick. It's something they've always done. And
So,
you have it at Slock all the time.
For my sister who might be listening, a critique is a rehearsal 2 weeks before your production, and it's just a rehearsal, and you invite some respected friends in to watch your rehearsal and tell you what they see, whether what you're attempting with your production is working or not, and whether you need to reconsider moments in staging or moments in characterization, or if you're on the right track, if you're headed in the right direction. And there have been critiques that nobody can say anything like, it's right where it needs to be, and there have been critiques that have become,
you should
legendary.
set this on fire.
Yes.
And usually when I have a critique, I'll go in front and before the run and say, look, this is what I'm looking for. Can you help
Very
me
helpful.
with this? As opposed to, please tell me everything you need to know. You want to tell me about
Very
this
helpful.
character. And so, for instance, when I was directing the mother with the hat for Harbinger, I had Chris and Patrick come into a run because we were moving from rehearsal space to rehearsal space to different rehearsal spaces, and it was really, then we were at Albany Civic for that show. So when they came in and looked at it, I was like, look, this is sight lines for me, which is never usually a problem, but it was an open concept stage with 3 different sets, and I just said, I want to know if it works. I'm thinking of putting a curtain here to block off these other things. And afterwards, they were like, well, thank you, because we knew what to look for in this run. No, you don't need the curtain. 2 seconds in, we know that they're in the bedroom or they're in the living room.
Right.
We don't need a wall. We don't need a light. It was great. So I tell the directors at SLCA that if you want to have a critique, you are more than welcome to have a critique. But make sure you are inviting people. I wouldn't invite a costume designer to my critique. Most of the time, the costumes aren't done. We're working on very limited time, where people have full-time jobs, and then they're coming to pull dresses at night. So, I would say to them, make sure you're inviting people who are going to give you a whole picture, and know that yes, there's going to be masking. Don't even bring it up in a critique because it's moot.
Well, I guess we can't have a critique because anybody that would be invited is in the minutes.
There you go.
And I do say, and to stroke the ego a little bit, I always, when we're like, oh, can I have a critique? I'm like, you should probably talk to Chris and Patrick, see if Chris and Patrick want to come. Because, they know what they're looking for.
I have a great Chris critique story. When I was directing Anne of Green Gables at Schenectady Light Opera Company, I was like 50 weeks pregnant, and I was. Chris and Chris Trombley came, and my Anne still didn't have her lines memorized, and Chris said to me, "Judi, she's got to memorize her lines." I said, "Yeah, you think?" And I finally that gave me the impetus to threaten to pull her out of the show, and I'd go on stage 50 weeks pregnant if I needed to, and
Well,
Shows all the time.
as an actor, I find critiques valuable, and it reminds you what time it is.
Well,
It's like, oh, we have 2 weeks. Oh, and there are people in the audience looking at my work,
yes.
and
Yeah.
saying, TikTok.
I've always
Yeah.
appreciated critiques. So
Well, we have come to the time where we must discuss the play that changed your life.
My.
Yeah, Judi Merriam.
the play that changed my life is Fiddler on the Roof. I loved theater as a child, as a teenager, but my mother would not let me be in the theater programs at our high school back in the 70s because our theater director smoked weed and was risque, and God forbid that I should be around that. So when I went to college, I finally auditioned for a student run production of Fiddler on the Roof. I got the part of Huddle. I absolutely loved it. I fell in love with theater. I loved everything about it. And then later on, when I was directing teen musicals for 23 years, I did Fiddler on the Roof, and my son Jensen, who died, played Tevye. And he did an amazing job. Actually, one of my students just said to me last week, she said, I appreciate that you never cast your kids just to cast your kids. I would always leave a room when it was time to decide on something if my child was auditioning for a role. So Jensen played Tevye. And then after Jensen died, it was 2 weeks later, Laura Andruski asked me if I would come sing for Fruma Sarah, and she said, I would like to be a part of your healing, and I would like you to be in Fiddler on the Roof. So
Oh my goodness.
I did Fruma Sarah for Laura Andruski, and it was just incredible. I got to be on rollerblades. I didn't know if I could do it because Jensen
Sure.
had been Tevye, but it was a part of my healing. And so even though I don't care if I ever see another production of Fiddler on the Roof because I've seen it enough times, that show started me out in theater, and it gave me grace when I so needed it.
What a lovely story. That's amazing how, one work, threads through your life so richly, and like, wow, what an impact. If it was one of those bells that you had just rung rather than the 3, that's extraordinary. I'm so glad that you have Fiddler in your life, and I hope you go see another Fiddler.
I can
And
always see Fiddler.
yeah, go see the Yiddish Fiddler.
Oh, that's
yeah.
actually that. And one more Fiddler story. I was in Fiddler at SLOC when they did it back in the 80s.
Sure.
Before I
Joe Phillips?
Is that Joe?
No, 80s.
No, it was
Yeah.
Ira.
Long time
Ira
ago.
Gilman.
Joe was in Laura
Joe
and
was in-
Drewski's.
yes.
Right.
Well, they gave me, Thelma Zay called me up and said, will you be Fruma Sarah? I said, oh, I'd love to be Fruma Sarah, which is funny that later on I was. And then 2 days later, Thelma called me and said, we made a mistake, and we want you to just be in the chorus because somebody else has to be Fruma Sarah. I guess there was a person that made a big stink that she didn't get Fruma Sarah.
Oh, we made a mistake.
And it was easier to pull me out because I wouldn't have made a stink. And I didn't. And the other person was Fruma Sarah. But, and those are things that reminded me how we behave allows us opportunities in the future, too. If I had probably been a horrible person, who knows, and made a stink, who knows if I had been in.
You stored it up so you could play Grandma Kernitz.
Maybe that's all of it, yes. So I lost Fruma Sarah in 2 days.
Get in touch with it. We made a mistake.
Plus, it was
Have you ever been cast and then have someone come back to you and say, we made a mistake?
No, I was told at another show at the same company that I was cast in the ensemble for something, and I said, I thought I read pretty well for this. Like, can you tell me, can we talk about why? And they said, the director thinks your voice is a little too twangy for this. And I was like, oh, okay. And then they had a second round of callbacks. Well, it was for Grease. And they had a second round of callbacks because they didn't have 3 of the roles of the T-Birds cast, and I went to the callbacks and just sat in the back. And I said, I like another crack at this, and I ended up getting the role.
Twangy.
Took the twang out.
Twangy.
Yeah.
Twangy.
And I was like, okay, it's kind of
Twang out.
Twangy.
take
So
the
Brian
take the
Sheldon.
twang out.
What is the play that changed your
The
life?
Full Monty.
Oh,
I say it all the time. The Full Monty because I was at SLOC. I did it at SLOC, and then I did it again at Theater Barn a year and a half or 2 years later with Mike Menching as the director for both productions. And I played Dave. And I've always been a big guy. I've always been a big fella. So I was bigger. And if you don't know what happens in the Full Monty, at the end they get completely nude. It's 5 or 6 men who are strippers who should not be strippers traditionally. And I was the fat guy. And it was so rewarding, the giving yourself the... I had to make myself be courageous to get naked. And there was, actually when we did it, there was a rule in the city of Schenectady that there couldn't be any nudity on stage.
I remember that. Al Jasinski was the mayor.
Yeah, so Mike and the production team wrote the town, the city, and was like, hey, it's a new millennia. And they reversed it so that we could get naked. But when we auditioned for the play, we were told, it's going to be flesh-colored thongs, so you won't actually be nude. So then when they got it reversed, Mike Menching had to come in and go, hey,
remember what we said?
Surprise!
It was kind of like that. We sat all down crisscross applesauce on the floor. I'm a big fella. I can't really do that. And he's like, listen, they reversed it, and we can, but you don't have to unless you're comfortable with it. And I think 3 of us were I was like, I'm doing it. I'm here. I'm already, there's a scene before the big dance number where my character Dave comes out of the bathroom stall and he's wrapping himself, I'm in underwear, and I'm wrapping myself in saran wrap because he reads that you sweat when you wrap yourself in saran wrap. And so I was like, I'm just gonna do it. I'll do it. What the heck ever, let's do it. And I remember my mom came to see the preview performance. This is at Old SLOC, not New SLOC.
Yeah.
And my mom came to see it, and at the end, what's gonna happen. And I warned my mom. I was like, Mom, I get naked. It's a second. It's not, you're not gonna see me. And at the end of it, we're doing this dance number back and forth, and my mom stood up and screamed at the top of her lungs, "Do it, Brian!" It's on the video because they used to video the preview.
Yes.
Do it, Brian. And so it happens.
Ah.
And I remember afterwards we're down in the green room. It used to be the downstairs green room. And my mom comes in. I go, Ma, I was Dave. I wasn't Brian in that moment. She was like, I've never been more proud of you in my life. Never been more proud of you. So it was the Full Monty. It gave me the courage to step outside my comfortable zone, where I was comfortable, and really just try new things. So
Awesome. I did the changing room at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. It was a big deal. The production company was the group that worked, only did plays after you graduated. And I was invited as a younger, yet to graduate, to do the changing room with the production company because they needed 15 guys to play a rugby team. And the whole play takes place in the locker room. So the guys show up, they change into their uniforms, they come in at halftime, and then they shower and go home, all on stage. So there's a lot of nakedity and nakedity.
Oh.
And we would go in, and there were matinees where all the older folks would come because it was free theater, and they would all attend. But, it was an acting school, very good acting school, and they came to see the changing room, and all of us are changing in our lockers far upstage, getting really small and getting, changing as quickly as possible, like no locker room you ever saw in your life. And we're all bare-assed up against the wall, and you hear this small voice out in the theater go, "That one's cute." like looking at each other, talking about me.
Did that give you some courage to strip down more, though, Patrick?
Well, we would have a shower upstage, and we would all sing in the shower. I think we were singing Beatles songs, and there are like 10 naked men upstage, not in view of the audience. But then we would enter from the shower soaking wet with towels, and everyone's like wrapping themselves up, 2 or 3 towels. And I came in and I dried my hair. I took my towel and walked
You
downstage.
are a bold man,
Yeah,
Patrick.
I was very popular for a week or two, but no, I took my opportunity and flaunt it, baby, flaunt it.
And whoever the cute one was missed out on a backer. That person probably could have
That's
been
right.
a backer.
That's right. Yeah.
Or had a lot of money left in somebody's will.
That's what I mean. It could have been. Someone missed their Max Bialystock moment.
I went home and I told my family at Thanksgiving what I was doing. They did not. They did not come and scream, "Do it, Patrick!" They did not. I used to tell my acting teacher that, having me in the family as an actor was fun for my parents because they could tell everyone what I was doing. I was good, cocktail party conversation. What's your son doing? Oh, he's doing a nude play.
Hey,
A lot of nudity.
I bet they had way more exciting stories than all their other friends.
There you
About
go.
kids.
There
He's
you
a
go. I was on a soap opera. He was.
Bank manager of a. That's acting's way more exciting.
Yeah.
Finance.
Yeah.
Good stories. Good stories. And that is our episode of the play that changed my life. Thanks so much for listening. I hope to see all of you in a theater real soon. Stay tuned and catch you next time. Thanks.